Most men chase, panic, or collapse under emotional pressure. But there's one type of man who doesn't, and women don't know how to handle him. There's a moment in a man's life that rarely gets talked about. It doesn't arrive with fireworks or some dramatic revelation. It happens quietly, almost awkwardly, like a shift you only notice after it's already begun. It's the moment he stops seeing women the way he was taught to see them, and starts seeing them as actual human beings, with their own depth, motives, fears, and complexity. Not the fantasies sold in movies, not the extremes pushed in online echo chambers, and definitely not the version shaped by fear, frustration, or wishful thinking. No, he begins to see women as they truly are. And once that clarity hits, something inside him changes for good. It's almost like watching a magic trick he believed his entire life, and suddenly spotting the thread behind the illusion. After that, he can't react the same way. He can't pretend the show is real anymore. He's crossed into a new kind of awareness, and the world feels just a little bit different, sometimes exciting, sometimes disorienting. The truth is, a lot of men never reach this point. Many spend years relying on cliches, advice from strangers online, romanticized expectations, or worst of all, fear. They try to decode women with shortcuts instead of paying attention. They analyze without observing. They react instead of understanding. They chase, idealize, avoid, or generalize, but rarely see. And honestly, misunderstanding is comfortable. It gives a man permission to blame, to guess, to fill in the blanks however he wants. But clarity? Clarity removes the cushion, because once a man starts really observing women, not judging, not projecting, just noticing, everything shifts. He begins to pick up on little things, the pauses between her sentences, the tone that reveals more than the words, the difference between genuine interest and polite engagement, when affection is real, and when it's a form of reassurance for herself, when loyalty is shown in patterns, not promises, when attraction is about connection, and when it's about convenience. And most importantly, he sees vulnerability in moments the average man completely overlooks. Vulnerability not as weakness, but as truth, as realness. But the part that unsettles him most is this: women, like anyone, show different sides of themselves depending on who they're interacting with. And when a man can't be manipulated, pressured, or guided by superficial signals, women tend to reveal a more honest version of themselves around him. Not because they're doing anything wrong, but because honesty naturally rises when shortcuts stop working. And that honesty can be beautiful. It can also be uncomfortable. Sometimes it's both. See, a man who pays attention doesn't get pulled in by the same theatrics that influence men who aren't grounded. He's not fazed by jealousy games, strategic silence, or the breadcrumb-like attention people sometimes give when they want connection without commitment. He doesn't trip over beauty. He appreciates it, sure, but he's not hypnotized by it. He doesn't lose himself in attention. He knows that admiration can be genuine, but it can also be a kind of currency. Not because women are manipulative, but because all human beings use whatever works to navigate relationships. The difference is simply that he now sees the mechanics behind the behavior, mechanics that many people ignore. And this clarity creates a reaction. Not rejection, not hostility, just an unusual kind of tension. Because when you can't be moved by the usual emotional habits, you invite something more real from the people you interact with. And realness, for many, is intimidating. Most women are not used to a man who listens calmly, notices quietly, and responds with grounded clarity. Most men are not used to creating that environment. So when a woman feels seen, really seen, she doesn't always know how to react. Part of her may want to run. Part of her may feel drawn to it. She may not understand these reactions herself. And this is where the challenge begins, not for her, but for him. Because once a man reaches this level of perception, He can no longer return to the easy illusions that make dating feel simple. He can't pretend words matter more than patterns. He can't ignore inconsistencies. He can't treat attention as intention. He can't convince himself that red flags are misunderstandings. He can't unfeel the subtle shifts that other men overlook or explain away. There's a kind of innocence in not seeing, a softness, a buffer between a man and truth. But once a man sees the truth, even unintentionally, he loses that buffer. He becomes sensitive to what lies beneath the surface, not in a paranoid way, but in an aware way. He notices when someone is comparing him to their past. He notices when admiration is sincere and when it's performative. He notices when someone's affection isn't for him, but for the comfort he provides. He notices when he's being tested, not because she doubts him, but because she doubts herself. Most men never recognize these moments. The awakened man feels them like shifts in temperature. And once he's tuned in, he can't tune back out. This clarity brings a strange kind of loneliness, not because he lacks company, but because he lacks illusion. His relationships don't move on autopilot. He listens for what's real, and many people aren't used to being real. They're used to performing a little, protecting themselves, trying to impress. He starts speaking a language most people don't speak: patterns over promises, truth over charm, presence over appearance, emotional steadiness over temporary intensity. And sometimes, he genuinely wonders if life was simpler before. Because with clarity comes the realization that most early-stage relationships are built on performance, on two people presenting their best selves and hoping the reality underneath won't break the spell. A woman might offer a polished version of herself she hopes he'll cherish. And the average man goes along with that because he wants the fantasy to be real. But the awakened man? He can't pretend. He can't unsee. He can't get lost in illusions he knows won't last. He sees the person behind the performance, the hopes, the insecurities, the little fears hiding under confidence. He notices how carefully she watches his reactions. He notices the moment she realizes she can't rely on the same patterns that worked on men before him. And the instant she recalibrates, he sees that too. It's not a power play. It's not dominance. It's simply awareness. And awareness, whether people admit it or not, changes the dynamic. Because people feel safest when they can predict others. But they feel most drawn to the ones they can't predict. And an awakened man sits right in the center of that paradox. An awakened man is calm in chaos. He doesn't get swept up in mood swings, mixed signals, or sudden distance. He doesn't panic when someone pulls back. He doesn't beg for reassurance or crumble the moment affection fluctuates. His emotional center doesn't depend on another person's approval, and that alone puts him in a category many women don't quite know how to react to. It's not that he's cold. It's not that he's distant. It's that he's steady. And steadiness, real steadiness, reshapes every interaction around him. He sees when someone's warmth is genuine and when it's a strategy. He sees when excitement is authentic and when it's just a performance to maintain his interest. He sees when someone is sharing truth and when they're sharing the version they think he'll like more. And this awareness creates a unique tension. Women respond to him with more intensity. Not because he demands anything from them, but because when a man sees their truth, they can no longer hide behind charm or distraction. But here's the twist most people don't realize. This awareness can be intimidating, but it can also be liberating. Because when a woman recognizes she can't manipulate, impress, or manage this kind of man the way she might with others, she's forced into something more honest, sometimes even against her own habits. That honesty might scare her, or it might draw her closer, but either way, she feels it immediately. And the awakened man? He feels it too. He can sense the moment someone shifts from real connection to emotional strategy. He notices when someone compliments him because they mean it, And when they do it because they hope he'll become more invested. He notices when flirting is an expression of desire, and when it's a way of soothing insecurity. He notices the difference between genuine presence and mental absence. Most men don't catch these things. An awakened man catches them instantly. This sensitivity isn't a curse, it's clarity. But clarity can feel isolating, because once you see someone's intentions clearly, even when they don't mean harm, you can't unsee them. You start recognizing patterns woven into conversations, truths buried in silence, motives revealed in the smallest gestures. And here's the part that creates the biggest divide. Women don't fear being disliked by a man. They fear being understood by him. Being understood removes the layers they're used to hiding behind. Layers built from culture, insecurity, past experiences, or simple habit. When a man sees through all that, he becomes someone they can't control with beauty, moods, or ambiguity. And that kind of presence is rare. Most men crumble under pressure. Most men chase when they should observe. Most men mistake chaos for passion and intensity for depth. But a man who sees doesn't break under beauty, or neediness, or confusion. His mind stays clear. His emotions stay grounded. And that forces a woman, if she wants to stay in his life, to meet him with something real. That's why relationships with awakened men feel different. They are more challenging, yes, but they are also far more meaningful. Because the awakened man knows what authentic connection looks like. He knows what genuine softness feels like. He knows the difference between affection that comes from emotional clarity and affection that comes from fear of being alone. He knows when a woman is with him because she truly desires him, not because he fits a role she needs filled. Most men spend months, sometimes years, misreading these signals. The awakened man recognizes them in moments. But awareness comes with a cost. You lose the ability to enjoy illusions. You can no longer get lost in beauty alone. You can't confuse attention with affection. You can't mistake emotional chaos for passion. You can't pretend someone is right for you when every part of you knows they're not aligned. You may still enjoy the thrill, the charm, the connection, but you no longer fall for the surface. And that makes you incredibly difficult to manipulate, because the very tools that influence most men no longer work on you. And a man who cannot be controlled becomes magnetic, not because he's trying to be, but because freedom is attractive. When a man isn't ruled by fear, validation, or scarcity, his presence changes the atmosphere around him. A woman feels it immediately: his independence, his clarity, his lack of desperation. And while that draws the right woman in, it repels the wrong ones. That's why awakened men often feel like they're walking through life in an emotional wilderness, surrounded by potential partners, yet unable to connect with most of them. Not because he's picky, not because he's afraid, not because he seeks perfection, but because he simply sees too clearly to settle for illusions. Eventually, he reaches a deeper realization. Seeing women clearly also forces him to see himself clearly. He recognizes the times he ignored his intuition, the boundaries he let slide, the moments he mistook attention for love or manipulation for passion. But instead of blaming the women involved, he understands the truth. He was part of the pattern. He wanted to be chosen. He wanted validation. He wanted connection so badly he let clarity slip away. But once he sees this, something inside him levels up. His self-respect sharpens. He no longer tolerates emotional games. He no longer confuses temporary affection for long-term compatibility. He no longer breaks his own boundaries for the sake of being wanted. His desires shift. He seeks alignment over approval, depth over attention, consistency over intensity, peace over chaos. And women feel this too. He becomes a man who cannot be rushed, a man who cannot be pressured, a man who cannot be destabilized by silence or drawn in by superficial charm. He becomes the kind of man who sees manipulation for what it is, and with that clarity, manipulation loses its power completely. This pushes every relationship dynamic into new territory. A territory built on emotional truth instead of emotional strategy. A territory that is more demanding, but also more rewarding. Because the awakened man listens not to words, but to alignment. He observes how someone behaves when they're uncomfortable, not just when everything feels good. He pays attention to how they handle disappointment, not just desire. This is why awakened men are rare, because they require honesty. And honesty is uncomfortable for many people. But here's the beauty. For the right woman, the mature, grounded woman, a man like this becomes a sanctuary. With him, she doesn't have to perform, impress, or test. She can just be. And that kind of connection feels safer than anything she's experienced before. So if you're a man who sees what others don't, understand this. Your clarity is not a burden. It's a filter. It removes the wrong people. It reveals the right ones. It protects you from the version of yourself that once settled for less. But awareness only matters when paired with action. Don't dim your perception to make someone else comfortable. Don't pretend not to see what you clearly see. Don't let loneliness convince you to accept illusions. You've earned this level of clarity. You've paid for it with experience, reflection, and growth. Stand in it. Live in it. Trust it. And if this message resonated, if it gave you a new angle, a new awareness, or a new sense of grounding, then support the channel. Like the video, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe for more content that challenges, strengthens, and awakens. Your growth supports the community. Your clarity helps others rise.